Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today's Tuesday, December 9th, 2025, and the pipeline vote in the House will take place today. Melissa Lantsman and the House leaders, the CPC House leaders, are all talking about it, pumping it up like it's a big deal. And they're predicting, and they're putting all their eggs in one basket to say that the Liberals are not going to vote for this thing because it fundamentally goes against their ideology, and they're going to say this is proof that the pipeline is never going to get built. We'll see. Who knows? They're betting big on this, but at the same time, I pretty much agree with them. I don't think that the Liberals will actually vote in favor of anything the CPC put forward, no matter even if they agree. Trump on fertilizer, heavy tariffs for Canada coming if Trump gets his way on potash. And so, sorry, Saskatchewan, our leadership is terrible and they're getting bad deals for you. And Trump just keeps winning for the United States. And, well, our country doesn't come into the equation except how Trump views our country as taking advantage of the United States. So pretty wild stuff. And he wants to reshore fertilizer and even turn it into an export. So won't that be interesting? Not great for Canada, right? Because we had that market cornered, and now fertilizer companies are leaving Canada and market share is leaving Canada, and we're competing with a massive economy that could dwarf our economy and our operations very quickly. Documents released to the Freedom Convoy, or documents related to the Freedom Convoy, were destroyed by the government because they said, oh yeah, well, that happened, so we've got to destroy these documents. So there's no real explanation. They're just doing what they usually do, which is destroying evidence. DeSantis declares Muslim Brotherhood and CARE a terrorist organization in Florida. So that's interesting, and we'll see how that impacts things, if it impacts things at all. CCTV that can gauge your emotions and your actions, your movements and things like that. It's interesting. Why would they want to know your emotions, right? Oh, an angry mob. There's an angry mob coming to see you, right? Like, initiate the robot dogs that also can read emotions. Scary stuff coming our way. UN DRIP, judges push to have all the laws harmonized with the UN DRIP, and we've got just some other people who are talking about that, and I think they make some good points, so I like to highlight that kind of stuff. And C9 apparently has hit a snag, and I don't know, I can't tell if there is, I don't think the government really does care about pushback. If citizens don't like what's happening, I think the government just really doesn't care. I think fundamentally they hate us, and they don't care about the prosperity of Canada unless it impacts the amount of money they can send to Ukraine. If it impacts the amount of money they can send to Ukraine or other money laundering operations that they're involved in, then they care deeply about it. But and if it impacts their ability to access your children at school, they care deeply about it. But they don't actually care about the taxpayers or their ability to be competitive in the steel industry or the softwood lumber industry or any industry at all, or oil and gas or anything like that. They don't care about Canadians in the way they should. They care about Canadians in the way that, how can we take more money from them and send it to Ukraine? That's the only way they care about Canadians. So they hate us. And so if this is true, that C9 hit a snag, I don't know it's because of pushback. It may be a procedural snag. I'm not entirely sure. And I'd be hard pressed to believe that Mark Carney would derail this for any reason, really. So I don't know. Things are up in the air. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we got to talk about this is regarding, well, we'll start with C9 and then we'll talk, we'll do this and then we'll talk C9. This is the Liberal Bill C15, and this is the Liberals being able to exempt themselves from laws. We have a grocery store code of conduct, okay? Because the Liberals don't trust the grocery stores, but they want the ability for ministers to exempt anybody they want, individuals, companies, whatever, conflict of interest be damned, from rules, regulations, and laws are right up to the criminal code. Everything but the criminal code they're exempt from. They can exempt people from. And this is incentivizing, or at least making very easy, conflict of interest and enriching your buddies, right? Enriching your friends' friends, your friends' wives who might own a company after this whole situation came out. If you can do something, somebody's going to abuse it somewhere. So it seems like a bad idea. So did I say there's lots to get to? Let's get to it. Let's get to it. Here is Michael, oh man, I can't remember his name, Michael Barrett. And he is talking about all of this. And he says, isn't this a conflict of interest? You can't see that this is a conflict of interest, and this creates a very bad seeding ground to create conflict of interest and other very, very bad outcomes. Here we go. And it's almost incentivized. Here we go.
Liberals Bill C-15 creates a new power for ministers to exempt companies from federal laws, and this can be done in secret. This opens the door to conflicts of interest that Parliament and your office might never see. If a minister can grant exemptions, and they can be granted to companies that they are connected to, even conceal their orders from public release, won't this at a minimum make it harder to detect that a conflict of interest exists? But doesn't it also create the opportunity for real conflicts of interest to occur with no effective oversight whatsoever?
Just because the minister is authorized by statute to do something doesn't mean he can avoid the conflict of interest to act. If it is part of his function to exempt the company, he can do that. If there, however, is under the act a conflict of interest, as you suggest in your example, then he has to recuse himself. The act is quite clear. He cannot participate in the decision. He can't even be in the room. He has to leave and absence himself when that decision is made.
It appears to be a systemic gap that's being created, though, Commissioner. It's a path for ministers to bypass the usual parliamentary safeguards and ethical scrutiny by shifting decisions into private exemption orders. Does that not present a cause for concern for parliamentarians?
I'm not sure I follow you. How, Mr. Barrett? Where is the shifting taking place here?
The effect of their orders is not public, and they can exempt the normal release of information that we would see, and it's for a period of years, and there would be no detection that it has occurred. So we assume that the minister leaves the room, but oftentimes we find out only that a breach has occurred because of the release of information, access to information requests, inquiries of ministry, order paper questions, and the like. If
when you say the exemption,
and this prevents that. And so this whole thing's 5 minutes. So we've listened to 2.
Secret.
That's enough. I think you get the point. And the point is to avoid accountability, scrutiny, and oversight. And we lose in that situation because if our government is opaque, meaning not transparent, we can't see through them, right? They're opaque. They're not clear, right? Transparent is clear. Then we can't hold anybody accountable because we have no idea. And he's, as Barrett said, if it's all secret for a period of years, then it won't show up in freedom of information. It won't show up in those demanded reports. And so there would be a problem, right? There would be a problem. And we would not know. And that's part of the problem. John Berg, let's talk about C9. John Paul Berg says, it's not an anti-hate bill. It's a dystopian level censorship straight out of Brussels and Davos. And CBC is reporting anti-hate bill stalled after Fraser's office brokered a deal without the Prime Minister's approval, according to sources. Bloc Québécois leader says Liberals agreed to remove religious exemption to hate crime laws. So apparently that's not happening now. So good news, everyone. Maybe. I'm expecting this fight to happen again in January, folks. Larry Brock says, breaking, the Liberals can't make up their mind. Bill C9 is ground to a halt after the Liberals secretly tried to rewrite Canada's hate speech laws. And now, instead of answering for their actions, Liberal leadership is scrambling behind closed doors. Canadians deserve honest leadership, not chaos and secrecy. So the hate speech laws themselves are, without the religious exemption, unconstitutional, and that's already been ruled by the Supreme Court, as I understand it. And so, without that exemption, a whole bunch of other things are not able to be done that they've already done. And so maybe that would undo it. And so maybe that's why they're scrambling and they don't want to move forward with C9. I genuinely don't know. I'm just speculating. But here's part of the article. Anti-hate bill stalled after Fraser's office brokered a deal with the PMO, without PMO approval, And it says the future of federal government's anti-hate bill, C9, is unclear after Justice Minister Sean Fraser's office brokered a deal with the Bloc Québécois without getting it approved by the Prime Minister's office, sources tell CBC News. Bill C9 proposes new criminal code offenses, including one that would make it a crime to intentionally promote hatred against identifiable groups in public using certain hate or terrorism-related symbols. So, like, if you were promoting a yoga club with a swastika, that's okay. But if you said, this swastika represents me and my brothers, that's bad. And the person who gets to decide if it's a yoga club or an activity club is the government, and they get final say. I just find their wording a little muddy. It's a lot muddy, right? Like, they would make it a crime to intentionally promote hatred against an identifiable group. So if I say this trans flag is actually a communist flag, is that hatred? If I say that man can't be a woman, is that hatred? It's very, very subjective, and the whole thing is wonky. And their whole idea of use of identifiable symbols against identifiable groups and blah 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 blah, very piecemeal. Once you open the door, you can just slam it all the way. Once you open it a little bit, you can slam it all the way, the rest of the way, and then we see what I'll show you at the end of this series of tabs, like what's happening in England. Anyway, I just think it's very, very muddy, and I'm not advocating for groups of people to target other groups of people, because like that's gang warfare and stuff like that, and we should be better than that. I'm not advocating for that. But at the same time, you should be able to identify, we don't like XYZ. We don't like when this happens, and we think that this group of people is probably responsible for it. We should stop that from happening. And then you can, in that way, you can identify a problem and solve it. And then they're reframing that as hatred. Is it? Is that a genuine concern, or have we all been brainwashed to view things through their cracked lens? It would also make hate-motivated crimes a specific offense and crack down on willfully intimidating and obstructing people outside of places of worship. But in a minority parliament, the Liberals need support to pass the bill. Is it enough? It is set to go through clause-by-clause study in the Justice Committee, composed of Liberals, Conservatives, and Bloc Québécois MPs. Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet told reporters last week that his party struck a deal with the Liberals to amend the criminal code to remove a religious exemption from Canada's hate speech laws. The deal was first reported by National Post. 3 sources speaking to CBC News say the bill was stalled because Justice Minister Sean Fraser's office brokered a deal with the Bloc Québécois without getting a buy-in from the Prime Minister's office. Sources say the agreement to amend the bill hit a snag because the Prime Minister had not approved it. So hate speech laws, from what I've read, people are skeptical that this is the reason. It seems like something happened, and I don't know what. I don't believe that it was public pushback, but some people are saying public pushback. Something else happened, I think, because they don't care about the public. Something happened, and they have to back off on this. They can't do it for whatever reason, and they're going to try and fix that reason and then come back with this again. But they can't do it for whatever reason, and now they're trying to find a bag man, somebody to hand the bag to and say, it's this guy's fault, and they'll get rid of him, bring somebody else in, and try it again. Okay? Gary Anasangri for Public Safety Minister. Isn't he already Public Safety Minister? Don't. Anyway, Michael says, if it is true that Fraser brokered a deal to remove religious exemptions in the hate speech law without getting the Prime Minister's approval, can we please finally admit that he's a terrible minister who destroys everything he touches? We all knew that already. Anybody who watches this show knew that. Candace Malcolm says newly obtained documents reveal Carney's government is studying a national digital passport that could function as a domestic ID. Internal documents show immigration officials quietly examining enforcement options for a nationwide ID system, despite MPs rejecting the idea for years. Can you imagine having to give your passport to your employer? We're trying to crack down on foreigners at work. No, you're not. You're not. Absolutely not, right? Try to get, is he having a laugh? So we'll see if this passport thing goes through. I've talked about that a lot yesterday, but I don't feel like I examined it very much. BlackRock's reporters talking about this as well. With no parliamentary oversight, Immigration Refugees Canada studies adoption of digital passports as national ID system. The assumption is that the passport would be used within Canada as an identity document, and you can see the within Canada highlighted right here. And one of the things that I say is kind of classic conditioning. We are being trained, and then once we are doing that thing that they want us to do, once we're already using whatever that thing that is they want us to do, they'll flip it out and make it just a bit of a higher demand. You just have to show it now. You just have to show it now. And you're already doing it. And so it's like, do you have a Costco membership? If you go into Costco, you have to scan your ID. You're already doing it. It's just going to be broadened and expanded, and you won't get access to anywhere. And it's going to be really inconvenient if you don't listen and blah, 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 blah. Right? So, and people will get arrested if they walk into a store without scanning their ID, and you'll hear about people getting arrested. And people will say, it's just an ID. Why don't you just scan it? It's not a big deal. It's just a mask. Why don't you just wear it? It's not a big deal. So what will you do, Canadian man? Disclosed TV says, new under draconian plans, the UK government is consulting on the use of technology that analyzes citizens' motions and emotions using public CCTV cameras. Right? Ooh, That's pretty wild. It's just a retinal scan. Come on, what's wrong with you? Edwin says, and then we're in a situation of Minority Report, right? And then you're walking down the airport and you've got personalized Google ads flashing at you from every banner and every billboard. Edwin says, will the internet ever be the same after what Australia has announced? Australia announced a nationwide ban stopping anyone under age 16 from using social media. So here they are announcing this. This is on December 10th.
From 10 December, social media platforms will have a responsibility to remove young Australians under the age of 16 from their platforms. With the support of the regulatory guidance being published today, there is no excuse for non-compliance. Platforms must take reasonable steps to detect and deactivate underage accounts, to prevent re-registration or circumvention, and to provide an accessible complaints process for their users. Platforms must implement the laws in a way that is effective, private, and fair. They must communicate openly and transparently with their users about the age assurance systems that they are using. We will always keep backing Australian families and keeping Australian kids safe. From 10 December,
There you go. So all of the governments in lockstep are all attacking their citizens in the same way. Michael says, global online forum Reddit is preparing to mount a high-stakes legal challenge to the Australian government's world-first social media age limits in a direct threat by a major tech company to one of Prime Minister Albanese's headline policies. The potential for a blockbuster legal showdown has emerged less than 24 hours before the Albanese government's youth social media ban comes into effect on Wednesday. The U.S. $44 billion platform has enlisted barrister whoever to run its case, backed by top-tier law firm Thompson Gear, according to two sources with knowledge of the challenge who spoke on condition of anonymity. Reddit's lawsuit, which could be lodged within days, is expected to be through the High Court of Australia, challenging the restrictions the social media ban imposes to teenagers, implied right of freedom of political challenging the restrictions the social media ban imposes to teenagers, implied right of freedom of political communication. There we go. Hertzfield is a highly regarded silk and top advocate for constitutional law. Thomas Gear, meanwhile, has repeatedly represented X when challenging rulings by the e-safety commissioner. Reddit's lawsuit would be the second challenge to the youth social media ban. The Digital Freedom Project, a campaign group led by New South Wales Libertarian Party MLC John Ruddock, lodged a case fronted by 15-year-old Noah Jones and Macy Neeland with the High Court 2 weeks ago. It named the Commonwealth of Australia, e-Safety Commissioner Julie Inman Grant, and Communications and Sport Minister Anika Wells as defendants. So this will be tied up in court for a little while, but while it's tied up in court, I'm sure that they're going to go live with this thing. They're going to say, oh yeah, well, it's important for national security and safety and stuff. And so pretty scary stuff. They're going to go ahead with it and then maybe bury the cases. I think they're going to try this stuff, but we'll see. We'll see. David is responding to the European Central Bank. 7 hours ago, the European Central Bank says the digital euro is the next step for our money, and it is integral to strengthening our strategic autonomy in the digital age. Executive Board member Piero Cipollone and EU Commissioner somebody else explain why Europe needs a digital euro. So they're communists, and I'm pretty sure Europe doesn't need a digital euro, but they're going to try and force it down their throats anyway. This is more speech, like digital euros, central bank digital currency. It's all speech control. It's all a way to be able to shut you down whenever they want. Here is a bridge is opening, and it's got a name that we're not able to pronounce it. And this reporter asks a question about the steel used in the bridge, because it's not going to last very long for whatever reason, because of the steel used in the bridge. And a First Nations person comes up and interrupts the person being asked the question and says, only nice questions, please. We're here celebrating. We don't want any negative questions right now. Have another press conference for negative questions. And I wish I'm kidding, but I'm not. Here we go.
My question is about the materials that went into making the bridge. There has been some controversy about the steel in particular that went into making the bridge. Some people have alleged that it caused delays or more added costs, took away jobs from British Columbia workers. Can you please just weigh in on that?
Sorry, again. Chief Marilyn Gabriel, Common First Nation. coming out, celebrating with our nations, the Musqueam and the Kwantlen people. We're here to celebrate for our people. This is the first bridge named from our beautiful dear elder, Larry Grant. Kwantlen has the utmost respect for you and the Kwantlen people. It hurts me. I have to tell you, it hurts me. You have him all day. Please keep those questions for a side press conference. We're here to celebrate. Please don't take that beautiful day away from us. Our dear elders still here.
Okay, so you get the point. Don't take our beautiful day away from us by asking questions that we all know the answer to, and we all know that it's accurate. And so that'll make me sad. That'll hurt me with your evil, mean words. And so speech controls come in all shapes and sizes. Here's this lady talking about the manosphere. She would know. She would know. And she's an NDP from Port Moody and Coquitlam. And man, this is, if you had a right-wing person spouting identical right-wing ideology, people would recognize it right away as a problem. But left-wing spouting this kind of nonsense, this is a Ways and Means committee. This is some kind of committee that is official. These people think that they're doing valuable work, and I disagree. I don't think this work is valuable. I think this is a distraction and it's damaging to our country. So, and we pay for it with taxes and time and attention. I'm showing you not because I want to pay attention to this lady, but because I want us all to know the language they're using in the House of Commons and what they're going to label hate when they have the tools to come after people who question their radical ideology. Here we go.
Misogyny now has a new name. Manospheres. There are clubs, podcasts, books, and influencers who use these platforms to radicalize young males through a combination of algorithmic design, social dynamics, and exposure to extremist ideologies. Remember these words, Mr. Speaker. Algorithmic amplification, gamification of hate, normalization of misogyny, recruitment of vulnerable men, and lack of counter-messaging. These are all the enemies of human rights, and they are the new wave of violence against women and diverse genders.
That's just a minute. That's all I've got. That's all I've got in me right now to watch. My gosh, this was from December 6th. Somebody said red dress pin, rainbow feather earrings, flat top haircut. Before she opened her mouth, we all knew what she was going to say. That's a comment from somebody in the chat on YouTube there. So that's pretty funny. Yeah, man, the whole thing is it's pretty crazy. But she's framing talking about the insanity as problematic manospheres that are the new face of misogyny, right? And holy cow, I feel like she's the new face of misogyny. Here's what they're doing in England if you call somebody a bike nonce online. Honestly, Graham Linehan says, one of the tweets was calling someone a bike nonce. Could not have been clearer that it was a joke. I'm laughing, but holy cow, I won't be laughing when I'm the one being locked up.
2 and 4, the racially aggravated offences, there will be custodial terms of 6 months, and on counts 6, 8, 9 and 10, custodial terms of 4 months, all such terms to run concurrently, and all suspended for a period of 18 months. If during that 18-month period you commit any further offence, counts 2 and 4.
So I don't know what's going on. So he's got a suspended sentence for 18 months, and then he's got 6 months in jail to be multiple counts to be done concurrently. And I don't know if there's a way for him not to be in jail if his Twitter starts kowtowing to the regime, right? If you start posting pro-regime things, then we'll let you not go to jail type deal. I genuinely don't know, but it's terribly disconcerting when the government is trying to be able to label anything they want as hate, manosphere podcasts and all, and England's tossing people in jail for that kind of stuff. Like, it is very, very concerning, and the direction this is going, well, it's not going to more freedom. I'll tell you that right now. So, man, we got a fight in front of us, and I hope I'm wrong about that. So, but I think most of the fight is us going to be saying no, and they're going to make it more and more difficult to say no. And a lot of people are going to say, well, I said no until I didn't anymore. And that will be a quiet thing. And I hope that I'm wrong. Anyway, we've got to say goodbye to the stream. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks. If you want the whole show, head over to CanadaPoly.com.